Do gather data and calculate your value. Keep this information updated and at hand when speaking with HR and your boss. So all of that data we covered, I want you to pull all of it. I want you to highlight it. I want you to keep it up to date. I want you to figure out what your worth is. Then always stand in your value. So no matter what people are telling you, no matter the no's that you're receiving, that does not mean that you're not worth it, that you're not worth that value that you calculated. So always be committed to that and stand in it. Do decide what you will or will not accept regarding pay based on your value calculation. So when we calculate it and we figure out a range that we're comfortable and confident in, we know that that's not always the reality we're going to have, or at least not right away, because it's a work in progress, right? So at that point, once you know that number, decide what you will or will not put up with. So for example, with our North Carolina example, with the head of archives and special collections making 60,000, and we determined that the minimum of all the numbers we saw was 65, we know that we wanted at least 65 with the stretch goal of 67. However, to get from 60 to 65 might take a little while, especially for a nonprofit. So, what would you accept? That is something only you can decide. And sometimes, as with my story, you don't know what you are actually willing to accept or not until it's offered. But it's something to think about. Okay. Do take every opportunity to point out the value you bring to the organization. So, this is a constant campaign. This is a constant exercise of you pointing out all of your successes, all of your skills, all of the good decisions you made, pointing those out at every opportunity because you are the only one who is going to do that for you, usually, unfortunately. And not only is this a good exercise for helping to keep your job if it's at threat, this will help you make your case when you actually do make that ask of getting increased compensation. They will be quite aware and can't deny all of the amazing things that you have done. Next is to track your victories, your metrics, and other measurables that are evidence for your request for better compensation. So take every opportunity to talk about it previous point and make sure you're documenting this. Um, Most of you will have like annual reports and performance evaluations. Make sure that that information is summarized and always included. It needs to be a part of the record. Okay, and don'ts. Don't stop asking for better, accurate compensation until they pay you your worth. So this is not something that, okay, if I'm the North Carolina position and I ask, okay, if I can't get 65, we've agreed on 62 for now. Because they gave you that win, that doesn't mean you stop asking. You keep asking until you are paid your worth. Don't let higher ups gaslight you or offer irrelevant excuses. So many of us have heard and will hear things like there's not the budget for it. You should be lucky that you have your job still. You should be lucky that you're doing a job that you love. There's a million other people who would line up to do your job for free. All of those bullshit excuses that actually aren't relevant to you needing to be paid your worth. Because the truth is, you are the one in that position currently. And you're the one with that skills and those responsibility that equals a certain amount of compensation. And so while you may be lucky to have that job in some regards, that is irrelevant. And that is not something that they should be telling you. So don't let them gaslight you. Don't let them use those excuses to shut down this conversation, because the truth is, no matter what they are dealing with, that is for them to deal with and figure it out to compensate you for what your worth is. Also, don't self censor, anticipate the no, or engage in other thought patterns that don't put you first. For many of us, we care so deeply about what we're doing, and we're so empathetic, and we care about our organization, and we care about our other peers. We may know that the organization isn't doing well financially. We may know that our other peers also aren't being paid their worth. Things like that. However, that doesn't mean that you put yourself at the back of the line. The truth is, it is on the organization to figure their stuff out, and it's on your peers to advocate for their own worth. Nobody's going to do that for you. So you need to ask for yourself. And what I think you will find is that you will help set an example for your peers, and you can actually maybe help work together to make everybody's life a little bit better. So please don't let your kind heart and your passion for the profession put you at the back of the line, because truth is you will most likely burn out and you won't get what you're worth. Don't accept HR/your boss telling you what you're worth. Their information and motives are suspect. So suspect due to they're the ones that need to figure out the budget, etc. And it's easy just to tell you to be quiet and accept what you get. However, another thing to keep in mind, and we touched on this in the beginning of this presentation, is that usually they have no effing clue what you do, let alone how much you're worth. So that's something only we can figure out and educate them on, not the other way around. So remember that. Don't let inaccurate position descriptions slide. So this is a bit of a slippery slope, and I want to be very clear. If you have an inaccurate position description, you need to request for it to be updated and the compensation to be adjusted appropriately. Many of these organizations that operate unethically will change your position description, sure. They may promise to adjust your compensation, maybe. Do not let your position description be changed and not receive immediate adjusted compensation. They need to happen together. Otherwise, they're going to go ahead and formalize all of those additional responsibilities, but they're also going to formalize still not paying you your worth. So those need to happen together. Don't let them pigeonhole you into a pay category that isn't accurate. So thinking about my story and about how they didn't even bother to create an archivist classification or be open to trying to create a more accurate half librarian, half development classification for what I was doing. Don't let them do that to you, because what essentially happened was, because they had no classification that fit me, they very conveniently for them stuck me in the one that was like not accurate at all and also cheaper for them. Don't let that happen to you. So, you knowing your value, you being able to calculate your value, no one else can do it, and that is priceless. All right. One last thing before we wrap it up with a couple questions. Just know that this asking for what you're worth and actually making it happen, it is going to take time, especially since many of our institutions move so slowly. Make sure your requests are formally documented. So even if they're not going to allow you to do the position reclassification right away, as was the case with me, send those emails so that it has those dates and timestamps. Make sure that you're documenting when you're asking, what you're asking for, how often you're asking for it. In my case, I ended up having to document over the years how many conversations I had to have with them, what was said, what was promised, what didn't happen, dates and notes for all of that. And make sure you continue to give those to them, because that helps to reemphasize what they need to do and whatever they may have committed to. Another thing to keep in mind is you likely won't get everything you ask for the first time you ask for it. So that is a natural part of negotiation, especially if we think about the Charlotte example where the current pay was 60 and we needed to get to a minimum of 65. Coming up with that $5,000 might take some time for that nonprofit historical society. So talk about a timeline, talk about what other things you might be able to do, and just know that if you wanted 65 and you didn't quite get it, but you still got something, if that is okay with what you've had in your mind for what you will and will not put up with, great. Just know that it could take some time depending on how much you need to make up. Another thing to keep in mind and related is that you can negotiate for other non-monetary benefits. So, particularly in the cases where the organization may not be able to make up that large gap of your compensation right away, it is a good opportunity at that point that even if you do get some compensation or none at all, that you can negotiate for other things. Like maybe it's an extra week of vacation, maybe it's a better 401k match, maybe it's being able to leave early on Thursdays to take Timmy to violin lessons, things like that. So while you may not be able to get money, you might be able to get a better work-life balance, things like that. Next thing is scale down your work to what they pay you for. So if you're finding a lot of resistance, and this is something that I had to consider in my particular situation, if they're not willing to compensate you for that, or as in my case, everyone is asked to do a little bit more around here and pitch in, which is gaslighting, uh, think about scaling down your work to what they're actually paying you for. Because if they're not open to negotiating yet, then you need to give them exactly what they're paying for, which is not enough. Another thing is look for other work. So depending on what you're dealing with, what your situation is, what you will or will not accept, etc., sometimes the only thing that changes your situation is changing the job. And while none of us particularly like that option, it is an option that sometimes we need to consider. And then to finish it off, continue building your network and investing in yourself. So no matter what's going on, knowing that you will likely need to change jobs at some point, knowing that you need to become a good professional and continue to grow and evolve, which makes you more competitive and need more compensation. It is never a mistake to invest in yourself. So just remember to keep nurturing those things that will help you either ask for better compensation or find a better job. These points and more I do cover in one of the webinars I did earlier, Ask Me Anything Career Edition. So if you would like to hear more points about this and things like career pivoting and applying for jobs, do go check out that other webinar.